What is the toll of working in corporate America as Black women? This is a huge topic. And so this is more of a community discussion today. But if you are new to my channel, my name is Marissa Price. I'm a healing practitioner, helping Black women heal from workplace trauma, narcissistic abuse, anything that tries to steal our power, make us question our worth, right? I help Black women on that journey of self recovery, coming back into the authentic parts of ourselves. And so this topic is very close to me as someone who transitioned out of corporate America. Let's see, more than 2 years ago at this point. So March 2023, I started my own business as a freelancer. And so from that point on, I've been working with Black women exclusively, helping Black women entrepreneurs, digital entrepreneurs, create strategies, build marketing materials. I also help Black women now heal from, like I said, workplace trauma. I lead group healing circles. Silence Your Inner Critic is my group healing program that is wrapping up this week. And I'm so sad, all the ladies in there. But yes, so I do a variety of things as a freelancer, and just reflecting on my experiences in corporate America. So I was, I guess you can say, a corporate social worker, right? So in a corporate setting, in banking specifically, working with communities to get them funding for businesses, right? Projects that they had, grant funding, all those things I worked on. And so now as a freelancer, being able to work with my ideal clientele has been such a life-changing thing for me. And it has really allowed me to reflect on my time in corporate America and how often I was pressured to shrink, right? Maybe not outwardly, right? Maybe no one said it outwardly that I should shrink, but the messages I received were telling me that. And so this is like a conversation, a safe space for us to kind of discuss what we experienced in corporate America as Black women. We're often told that this is what we should be striving for. During our time in school, right, college, even K through 12, the pressure that we have to secure these corporate jobs. And so once we get there, what is our experience? I think I want to ask that question, right? Because I don't see enough around this topic. And I'll speak from my own experience. I wish people had been more transparent about what you would encounter in these environments as a Black woman trying to navigate charting your career. It can be so difficult, right? You encounter all these things, as I shared on my channel before, going from pet to threat in my most recent corporate role, coined by 3 Black women professors, Dr. Keisha Thomas, Dr. Rosemary Phelps, Dr. Juanita Johnson Bailey. We thank them for their research that has shown so many of us that we're not alone, right? That it's not us. When we're in these environments, we come in with our skill sets that are just miles long, I feel like. And now, again, being a freelancer and working with other Black women to identify ways you can pivot into freelancing, it has really solidified, right, my understanding that we have the most skills. We are skilled in so many different areas. We are often the experts in our fields, but it is a means of oppression, right, that tries to make us doubt those skills, make us feel like we're beginners sometimes when we really have all of these years of experience doing something. Again, make us doubt our abilities, all these things that are really, really deep rooted, which may make it difficult for some of us to even envision a path like freelancing. And so I'll be speaking more about that. Why are Black women left out of the freelancing conversation, right? When so many of us are coming from corporate backgrounds where we have seen the ins and outs of what business looks like. We've done things like business development. We have done, right, grant writing, all these skills that you can utilize to build a business where you actually choose who you want to work with, which I said that has been life-changing for me to be able to work with Black women, digital entrepreneurs, and Black women healing from workplace trauma, being able to identify your client base, right? And so, what is it about corporate America specifically that really makes us doubt ourselves, right? We're trying to often fit into environments that were not created for us. We're brought in, I'll speak from my own experience, in diversity programs. As a Black woman in banking, right? That was my entry point into the banking field through a highly traumatic internship program, diversity internship program. And just thinking about my experiences, right? Was it worth it? Was it worth it, right? The efforts, and not to undercut the efforts, right, that went into creating space for me to be in this place, in this setting. But I think I want to ask a question like, what is the cost, right? What are we bringing, specifically in my experience, what are we bringing young people into? And not really being honest about what they're going to encounter, right? Their skill set being called into question, their humanity sometimes being called into question, not being able to show up authentically, not being able to wear your hair as it is, right? The comments that we receive about our hair so often, about the way that we dress, these are really traumatic things. And I don't think that enough attention is being brought to that. These can really make you question your entire sense of self, right? So speaking about corporate trauma as Black women, if you're here live, welcome. Thank you so much for joining. Please let us know in the comments so we can say hello to you. And I do see a new member on my YouTube channel, Quabila. Thank you. Thank you so much for becoming a member. And Quabila has a wonderful Substack page. So let me just pull that up real quick so I can get the link to that. Yes, but if you are here live, let us know so we can say hello. I'm going to link Quabila's Substack. Here we go. Yes, so please subscribe to Quabila's Substack. He has an amazing Substack that I love called Black Women Get to Be, which is what we need. Which is what we need at these times. So please subscribe. Lit Twerker, hello. Yes, when your talents become obvious, you become the workhorse, but your work is attributed upward, not to you. Yes. Thank you for sharing that. Yes. Yeah, and this is something we just spoke about in my group healing program, Silence Your Inner Critic. When you do showcase, right, what we're told, and this is why it's so confusing, we're told to showcase our skills, our talents, our abilities. I know that coming into a diversity program, internship program in banking, that was the only message that I received. Show people what you can do, right? So they can give you the external validation so then you can get the job so you can move up, right? But then it becomes someone gets intimidated by your skill set eventually as a Black woman, right? So I think even being prepared for what we know is probably going to come. Someone's going to be intimidated by us just by showing up, and having an exit strategy already prepared, right? So when this person inevitably gets triggered by my brilliance, I know that my identity is not tied to this role, this job, this company, and I can pivot into something else always because my skill set is mine. Something I want to emphasize again with my community, Black women freelancers, right? We own our skills. No company, nobody else outside of us owns our skills. We own our skills. And we can take them wherever we want, right? So if you're mistreating me, if you're underpaying me, I'm going to pivot into something else that actually serves me better and leaning into your autonomy, right? Versus feeling like this is your only option, because absolutely not. It's not your only option. That's what they want us to believe, right? They want us to believe that we have such limited options that we just have to put up with whatever they throw at us. And so many of us are rejecting that notion. Like, no, how did I get this job? Right? You got to tell yourself your track record. How did you get that job? Your skill set. So therefore, you can pivot into any other area that you choose, leaning into self-determination with that same skill set. If it's another job, if it's freelancing, whatever that looks like for you, and knowing that you have the power to determine that for yourself is so important. Hello. Can't wait to chat with you tomorrow. Oh, yes, absolutely. And I love this name. Cinnamon Thickness 76. Come on, I love that. Thank you. Thank you for being here. You're welcome. Yes, Lit Twerker says double whammy. You're told that you can't move up because who's going to do your job if I move you? Thank you. And you see how confusing it is. We're being told contradictory messages here, right? And then wondering why we're experiencing so often symptoms of anxiety, right? Sometimes depression. As I just shared on LinkedIn, and one of my LinkedIn posts is gaining traction, talking about how Black women are being forced out of the workforce. But yeah, sharing, right, that the job that I was in, the toxic job that I was in, I was diagnosed with depression, right, as a result of being in that role. And then my short-term disability leave was denied as a Black woman, right, in this role that was supposed to be helping Black people. It's incredibly confusing, disheartening. Those of us who are in DEI style positions, and we know they recruited Black women specifically for these roles to lead strategies, right? And the thing is, we're doing it so well. And then it's a cycle, right? Someone gets intimidated, inevitably. Which is why, and someone shared this in the comments on LinkedIn as well, right? We often have to start our own businesses because there's no room for us to truly shine, express our brilliance, express our opinions without someone eventually being intimidated by what we share. Right? No matter how good of a job that we're doing, we're meeting all the requirements of the job and above and beyond. Many of us are asked to take on additional roles outside of what we agreed to do originally, and still excelling, right? On the inside, deteriorating, and no one cares. Right? Which is why we have to be our own safe place, our own place of protection for each other, to share our stories, what we're going through, right? It's so important. I was about to compliment your screaming as well. It's lovely, isn't it? I love it. Yes. So yes, corporate trauma is very real, right? So the trauma of, again, having to shrink, being told that how you are showing up authentically yourself is not enough, or it's too much, or both, which again is confusing, right? So do your hair like this, don't do your hair like that, wear this, don't wear that. Meanwhile, other people can come in looking however they want and excel, right? And be given all the praise, right? And you're probably doing their work too. So it's an entire system that is working to make us have all these things that we're now experiencing, like self-doubt, like questioning our brilliance, questioning, do we even have skills? Absolutely. How did you get the role? It's a means, right? It's an intentional way of trying to break our self-esteem. And so that is the trauma of corporate America, right? As Black women. And again, if you're here live, please feel free to share what has been your experience in corporate America. So things like code switching, and shout out to Glamazini Rushni Cope, who said this on her channel the other day, right? You're switching from your code. And that was like eye opening for me. So we come here encoded with these gifts, with these abilities, with these skills that we have. You're switching from your natural code. That's going to have an effect, right? So the effect is not small. We know that when we go home, we bring this trauma to our families, to our communities, and then we're still being told that this is what we should strive to get, to achieve, to obtain. While we're experiencing things like anxiety, depression, sometimes suicidal ideation, right? Which is what I experienced. So this is not small. The trauma of being the only one in the room. And we know that isolation, right? So oppressors love us to be isolated. They love it. When we feel like we're the only one, which is why community is so important, spaces like these, where hopefully you feel safe to share when you're ready, right? What you've been through, what you've experienced, so that we can hold space for you. Because being the only one, they like to target us, right? And then the self gaslighting gets even louder when we're in these rooms, when we're the only one, right? When no one stands up for us. Something else I want to talk about, right? So the bystanders, seeing what we're being exposed to with the anti-Blackness, right? And intersectional oppression is very real for Black women. We're experiencing oppression from multiple angles. So not just anti-Blackness, right? Disability status, right? Body shame. Sometimes, what is the word that I'm looking for? Like citizenship, right? So migration status, immigration status, ageism, colorism, texturism, featureism. So all of these things we're experiencing, right, as Black women in the workplace. And no one is standing up. No one is saying that's wrong. And so it becomes like a cycle, right, that you repeat to yourself internally. I guess it's me. I guess it's me. I guess I should pick myself apart. I guess I should shrink this part of myself. I guess I shouldn't reveal this anymore. When the entire time it's a system, right? And that's really the message that I want to say in this live. It's a system. It's not you, it's a system. Literally working to deteriorate, to destroy your sense of self. And so many of us experience this specifically, right, in corporate America. It is absolutely not limited to corporate America. But I can only speak from my own experiences, right? Having transitioned from a corporate role into freelancing 2.5 years ago at this point, and now having enough space and time in healing to be able to look back and see what was happening. What was happening during those times? It was a lot. And because it had been normalized, it's not something that I could just identify, right? This isn't right. This isn't something that I need to be exposed to. Because it had been normalized, because we are taught that this is what we should be always striving to achieve, is the corporate role. And going higher and higher and higher, right? At what cost? The cost is not small for Black women. So yes. Yeah, you're so welcome. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna. Yeah, Dr. O says, wow, the bystanders, many on the board stared and said nothing, though they knew what was being done was wrong. That's why I left, no support. Thank you for sharing that, Dr. O. Yeah. Yeah. That's so true. The bystanders. And that can be another source of trauma, right? When we start to unpack what we experienced, and then we're thinking about the other people who said absolutely nothing. And we're like, well, maybe it was me. Maybe it wasn't that bad. Maybe I imagined it. No, right? They just didn't stand up for you, which is wrong. And I'm sorry you experienced that. Yeah. This is a good point. Yeah, I don't think they're bystanders. I think they're silent participants. Yes, I don't give bystanders a pass. They're accomplices. Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah. Yes. Silent participants. I've never heard that term before. That is so true. I thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, because you're essentially agreeing to what's being done if you don't say anything, if you don't speak up. Mm, that is true. Yeah. Yeah. And just to touch on this quickly, right? So in corporate settings, we're often pit against each other as Black people intentionally, right? Pit against each other, told that there's only one space. And so we have to elbow, right? That's what the messages that we're told. You have to elbow each other because we're all striving for this one coveted spot. That could be a whole other video topic, but yeah, that's very true. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. Silent participants. Thank you. There's also an ever burning rage that builds within. Ooh, when you realize that it's not you, but the gaslighting persists. Thank you for mentioning this. Yes. Yeah, the rage. The rage. And part of my healing journey has been making room for the rage because that has often been an emotion that has been taught to us as being off limits. And I've spoken about this on my channel before, right? Black women in depression. I think the video is called Black Girl Depression. So depression can often present as anger because we're not given space to express human emotions, the full spectrum. And so allowing yourself that space to be like, you know what, I'm angry, I'm mad because that's angering, right? That should piss anybody off who went through that, who experienced that. If you saw someone else experience that, wouldn't you be angry? And so even carving out space for yourself to be like, there's a reason I'm angry because that was disgusting what I experienced, right? So even giving yourself that space to be vulnerable with yourself, I think is important in healing. And I do want to mention, so this has been a long, well, not really long time. It has been a few years though, a couple years since I co-founded the Job Liberation Virtual Summit for Black Women with Dr. Kamani. But I've been working on a one-on-one healing offer. So this will, I already released it to my email list, but yes, in the future, I'll be announcing it publicly. But if you do want to get on the wait list for Release to Rise, here's a link to sign up. If you are looking to heal from a toxic job, work experience, something that tried to, again, shatter your self-esteem, break your self-worth, right? And you're really coming back into who you are, trying to put the pieces back together, I would love to work with you one-on-one. This is a 3-month healing program specifically for Black women who have experienced workplace trauma. So please add your name to the waitlist if you're interested in that. Here, also in the description section on YouTube. But I'm excited, right? And it's taken a while for me to be able to package together the lessons that I have learned during my own experience in a toxic job, right? To be able to then present it to my community, to say that if you are looking for support and help and healing from a toxic job, that is the purpose of Release to Rise. Releasing the toxicity that we ingested in these environments to then rise from the ashes, right? Because that's not the end of our story. Absolutely not. We have so many more chapters to turn to. And so that is the link to the waitlist. I think I have a banner too. Yes. Hey, Jess. Hey, Marissa, dropping in, say hi. Welcome. Thank you for being here and saying hello. Okay. Yes, so the hyper surveillance too. The hypervigilance, right? The hypervigilance is often a result of the hypersurveillance in corporate settings. So having people look over what you're doing, interrupt you often, right? If they think that they can say it better. Right? All these things that we experience in the workplace that are really like tiny cuts to our self-esteem that add up over time, that lead us to experiencing things like anxiety, depression, and even worse as Black women, right, in corporate environments. Being dehumanized. And shout out to Jackie Abram, who speaks about this. Workplaces, particularly corporate settings, will pile on more work, more work, more work to our plates as Black women, right? Because of course you can handle it. So I'm gonna add another role, I'm gonna add another task onto your list, right? And it's not like you can refuse so often or say no without your job being on the line, right? But of course you can handle it, right? That's a level of dehumanization that is at play. The pressure to excel and succeed, right? Viewing ourselves through other people's gazes. And so I want to ask the toll that this has taken. If you're here live or if you're watching the replay, the toll this has taken on your body, your mind, and your spirit. Right? Because the impact is not small. And I'm so glad that so many of us are speaking up about the truth, right? What do we actually experience in these environments? The marketing is the marketing, right? Get into, like I said, starting off in an internship role, a diversity internship role, telling me that this is the pathway to success. And yeah, Vonnie Williams will actually be leading a session in my community, Black Women Freelancers, on redefining success. And I'll actually have her as a guest next week, so she'll be talking more about that. But so many of us are redefining success for ourselves. So does it mean a title? Does it mean the role? Does it mean the promotion? Does it mean more work? Does it mean more external validation? Right? Or does it mean rest? Or does it mean feeling aligned with what you were called here to do? Does it mean travel? Exodus Summit has showed us the options that exist when it comes to travel. Me having traveled abroad, moved abroad right after a toxic job experience, realizing that that is also an option if you want to explore it, right? Knowing that it's not for everyone, just as nothing is for everyone. But if you do have the dream to be able to travel and see the world, know that that is possible for you too. It's not just for other people. And so again, redefining what success means. What does it look like? And understanding the toll that corporate environments so often take on us as Black women. Our bodies, our minds, our spirits are being impacted. We're being traumatized. Sometimes our lives are being shortened by what we experience in corporate settings so often. So some of the hidden costs, right? Chronic exhaustion, declining health, anxiety, depression, dissociation, feeling numb, over functioning, This is huge. And again, something I talked about in my video, Black Girl Depression. Sometimes we will try to perform, over deliver when we notice those initial symptoms of anxiety or depression. Because there is not space so often for us to experience these things. Right? And so that's why we go down the pathway. I need to work even harder. This is dehumanizing. I need to push even more. When the whole time your body is literally like begging you to rest and slow down, but we've been taught to dissociate from our bodies, right? To completely ignore what our bodies are trying to tell us. And asking, who does that benefit? When we're disconnected from this message, right? This messaging, this sacred messaging, the information that our bodies are sending us, telling us to slow down, to maybe leave this environment, but we've been disconnected from that completely. So experiencing something like the grief of self-abandonment, which I'll be speaking more about, or dreams deferred, right? If you had a dream that you wanted to pursue, but again, if you're like me and you were told that this is supposed to be the pathway to success, the only pathway, I should say that too, to success, and you've put your dream somewhere and you can't even remember what it was sometimes, right? Knowing that it's still there, that you can always reawaken it, but the pain of feeling that, right? That you know that you were called to do something different. The impact on relationships and self-worth. So like I said, the toxicity from these environments often bleeds into families, communities. It doesn't just stay with us. We are so often leaders in our communities. So to think about, if we're being traumatized, many people are going to feel the effects of that. And I have thoughts about that I'll be sharing in the future, right? That this is very intentional. So it's important to know you are not broken if you're experiencing any of these things. You have been surviving systems that were never built for you to thrive. Never built for you to thrive. So externalizing what you're experiencing, as I say, often can be a huge part of healing. Understanding that no, it's not you. It is, in fact, the environment. It is. Right? Because those of us who have been able to take a vacation, to take space away, sometimes a sabbatical, sometimes a leave away from jobs, we find things coming back to life. And I did a video on this before. You're a flower in the wrong soil. But we find ourselves coming back to life once we're out of that environment. Even temporarily, we find our creativity reawakening, our ability to sleep. So many of us experience insomnia in these jobs, right? We're holding our breath day in and day out. We're depriving our bodies of oxygen, an essential element of life, as a stress response, right? So that's our body's cue. Something about this is not right? When we automatically go into the stress response involuntarily of holding our breath. And what could be the power of starting to pay attention to what your body is telling you? And I'll be co-leading a breathwork circle in August that I'm excited about. If you are someone who holds your breath as a survival response in traumatic environments, if this has been deeply ingrained, how can you start to take in more oxygen? It's that simple, right? It sounds that simple, but like in practice, if that's your go-to, your body's go-to response when you are stressed is to hold your breath, it's actually a practice that you have to implement into your life over time to be able to remind yourself, I'm not breathing, right? Ask me how I know. Yeah, I'm not breathing. So let me check in with my body. Instead of continuing to not breathe, I'm going to invite oxygen in and just see how I feel right afterwards. Because so many of us are not breathing, right? And so breath work, particularly for people who are experiencing oppression, is essential because they do want to steal our breath. Absolutely. Again, none of this is an oversight. This is very intentional to shorten our lives. We're fighting for our lives, right? And how can that look different, right? Fighting can look like breathing. That's your point of resistance because they want to do these things. They do not want us to rest. And so rest. Thank you to Trisha Hersey for showing us that rest as resistance, right? The NAP ministry. These are your points of fighting, right? Pushing back against a system that's trying to break you at every turn. And no, you're not imagining it. Right? It's very, very real what we are experiencing. Yeah. And thank you for sharing this. Yeah, I've been in survival mode for the last few years. Thank you. And I'm sorry. Yeah, these systems keep us in constant survival mode. Right? Not being able to, as I've talked about on my channel, grieve. Here's one day of bereavement leave. Don't get me started on that because that that makes me so mad. Yeah, one day of leave and you should be over someone's passing, right? It's completely inhuman. And they have been normalized, these policies, these practices, but asking ourselves, right, who's really our labor is upholding, right? These systems. And just sitting with that, something I've been thinking about. Yeah. Thank you for being here. Yes, I'm late responding, but here are some uncomfortable situations I encountered as a new employee. Week 1, someone remarked, I knew you were a Texas gal. Week 3, during my first in-person conversation with white colleagues, the topic of Black migration from the South came up. One colleague acted Black around me, but not in front of others. At a client site, the client pointed out the lack of diversity. The same colleague later complained to others, saying, we have our token. Oh my God, I am so sorry. And LinkedIn cut off the rest of the comment. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Yeah. That's infuriating. And I have an idea to talk about how it feels to be tokenized, right? Because, spoiler alert, not good. Right? It's actually a deeply traumatic experience to be tokenized. And to even say that. That's infuriating. That's infuriating. Yeah. Yeah. So thank you. Yeah. 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 And we see what we encounter, right? we see the inhumanity that we encounter. And we feel that. So often, I think we are taught and pressured to cut ourselves off from how we feel. And something I've had to remind myself, right? I come from a feeling people. I'm meant to feel. I'm meant to feel. And so, where is this pressure coming from? And who is it benefiting when we're cut off from our emotions, the information that our emotions give us? And a point of healing is also to be able to let your emotions flow, because we've often been socialized in Western society to control our emotions. To control, right? And that does not leave space for them to flow as they're supposed to. The more I've been reflecting on, again, my training as a social worker, my personal experience, when I've tried to control emotions, that's when things went awry. Instead of just letting them flow, right? They're information that is being given to us. Yeah. 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 Mine too. Yeah. And I just want to say how brave it is to share this, right? Because even reflecting on my own experiences, it's not easy. It's not easy to share what has actually happened. But I think it's important, right? As you've shared, and those of us, like, as you're ready to, feeling comfortable, particularly for future generations. I wish someone would have shared this with me versus me kind of being caught off guard as a first generation college student. I had absolutely no idea what I was walking into. And so even being able to share that with people coming into the workforce, right, particularly as Black women, like, you will likely encounter anti-Blackness, sexism, misogyny, the list of isms, and knowing that you can have an exit plan in place and you don't just have to stay. You're not stuck. The skills that you gain in any role that you have can be applied to a new role, can be applied to entrepreneurship if that is your path. It's so important. Yeah. Okay, so some pathways to healing, right? Recognizing that healing is not linear. And I think Alex L said that, so got to give her credit, right? Healing is not linear. So your healing journey will not look like this, like a graph. It's going to look like this. And I did a video on the cycle of change. I think that was my first video on my channel. But when you are in the process of changing anything about your life, it's going to be a process, right? It's going to be a process. There's going to be ups and downs, but knowing every time that you go around the cycle, you're a different person, right? You've picked up new information, you've had new realizations. And so even if it feels like you're not making any progress, continuing the journey is so important for healing, right? Welcome. Yes. What about when your boss is a Black woman who is purposefully limiting your career? Yes. As I mentioned earlier, they often love to pit us against each other, particularly in corporate environments. And I'm sorry that that's happening to you. I would say, as you can, working on your exit strategy from that job, right? Because you don't want someone who's limiting your career. Yeah, even I've had to go back to history and understand, where do these things come from, right? Where we're being pit against each other for a coveted spot, where we're told there's only space for one of us. So we got to fight each other. That mirrors a lot of the messages that were put out there during enslavement. And recognizing that the system has persisted over decades, over centuries, and we're still seeing the effects of them, right, through things like you mentioned. And Dr. Kamani, and I'll link her channel here, has a number of videos on all skinfolk and kinfolk. So let me link her channel here. Lifting as We Climb Consulting on YouTube is Dr. Kamani's channel. She has incredible information, interviews, right, coming across her channel. Changed my life to be able to see, you're welcome. I'm glad that was helpful. Yes. To be able to see that it was not me, what I was experiencing, which is like the importance of community knowledge sharing. When we're able to warn each other, to tell each other what you should expect in these environments so we're not caught off guard. When you enter into this environment, this is likely what you will experience. And I think there's a hesitancy around doing that because you don't want to put your experience onto someone else. You don't want to, if they're really excited about this opportunity, you don't want to dampen, right, what they're trying to do. But it's really important to be honest and transparent. As I said, particularly with young people who are coming into corporate environments. What should you expect, right? Hopefully you never experience these things, but you likely will. And when you do, what is going to be your plan to pivot, to exit, to seek another opportunity, right? To grow your network, to lean into your connections, to start your own business so that we're not always caught off guard when it happens. So other tools for healing can be journaling, leaning into your creativity. Did you used to like to do art? I know a lot of us have kind of cut off art from our lives, but thinking back when you were little, right? What activities did you like to do? Can you lean back into them to recover? Because this is really a process of recovery after experiencing a toxic work environment. It's recovering pieces of yourself, right? Who you are authentically that you may have had to hide as a survival strategy, and coming back into those parts of yourself, right? Realizing that they didn't go anywhere. They may have been turned down for a while you're in this environment, but you have the power to now turn them back up, to reawaken them whenever you choose. It can look like rest, movement, joy. I posted on my YouTube community tab in Substack about dance and how pivotal that has been in my healing journey. So it's a lot of activities that we may have put down due to the stress of being in a toxic work environment or a corporate work environment in general, where you had to fit into a box, be easily palatable, right? Not speak too loudly, very robotic, right? As we are taught that we have to be so often. And just reawakening, right, the parts of yourself, right, that are authentically you, that don't fit into the box. That can be huge for healing. Hello, yes, Ashley, yes. I couldn't understand my mother experienced trauma working for a corporation and quit and became successful self-employed, but expected me to work and stay in harmful environments. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's, we're taught so often, right? It's very, very deeply ingrained that this is what we should be seeking at all costs. And I'll tell you now, having been on the other side, right, being out of a corporate environment for the past 2.5 years, now knowing all the options and possibilities that exist outside of that, but that messaging is so deep. It's so deep, right? And it goes to things like seeking the approval, right? White approval to live, seeking a stamp, seeking the permission, seeking the validation, viewing, I think, corporate spaces as the ultimate source of legitimacy, right? And so when you do make it into this environment, that means that you're legitimate. And so many of us are, I think, coming back into the belief and the understanding that we came here whole, that we are already whole. We wouldn't look at ourselves as babies, right? And be like, that's not a whole person. No, we came here whole. But we're taught that we have to seek out these things externally in order to finally arrive, in order to finally succeed, right? In just asking the question, does that point ever truly arrive? Having had the title, having had the letters, right? All these, the recognition, still feeling hollow, still feeling empty. And Crystal, my amazing guest a few weeks ago, shared this as well. When you are able to achieve what you've been taught that you need to achieve to be successful, to be happy, and then you get to that point and it feels empty. We have to ask ourselves, was it worth it? Right? Is this truly ever achievable? Is it something that can be achieved, or is it already inherent within us? Many of us are asking ourselves that question, particularly Black women, when we see how we're being treated in the workplace, how we're the first to be pushed out. I just made a post on this, right? No matter how much effort we're putting in, no matter how much we're working ourselves past the point of exhaustion, when it comes time for layoffs, there we are, right? Being laid off in these huge disproportionate numbers. And so asking ourselves, like, is it worth it? Felicia says, yes, my healing journey includes journaling and daily affirmations. I love that. Affirmations are so powerful. And I do have a book that I actually wrote as I was healing from the job that I was in. So let me link that here. It's called Cocoon. It's on Amazon. Cocoon Affirmations for Transformation. If you're someone who's healing from something like a traumatic job experience, as Felicia says, leaning into things like journaling, your creative process can be very beneficial. Yes. Thank you. Yes, stand for something positive. I love that name. Thank you for joining. Yes. So again, inviting in joy. Many of us have had to cut off joy, right? And that's another thing. Our joy makes people mad. Our joy makes people mad, right? And again, a point of resistance. So if it makes you mad, I'm actually going to do even more of the things that bring me joy. If it makes you mad to see me rest, I'm going to rest even more, right? And that's your point of information, I think, in resistance as well. When you see the messages being peddled, right? Lazy is something people like to throw often. right? For us having a human need to rest, right? So since you say that, I'm actually going to take even more time to rest. I'm going to work at a slower pace. And again, having to go back to the narratives of people who were enslaved, the points of resistance, right? You're trying to push me to work as a machine, so I'm actually going to slow down and show you that you do not have that control. So identifying points of resistance can be a powerful way to heal, especially if you're still in the environment. Community healing. So things that I offer, right? I'm a healing practitioner, helping Black women heal from workplace trauma, narcissistic abuse, things like that. And I do have the link to, let me actually put it here, if you'd like to book a one-on-one session with me. Here's a link if you'd like to book a one-on-one session. I do have 2 spaces left for the summer until I open my client list for the fall. Yes. Had to set a timer to remind myself to breathe. Thank you for this. This is so helpful. This is so helpful for those of us, again, me, who the first thing I do when I'm stressed is I hold my breath. So if you have something like a reminder on your phone, just to, right, tell yourself, I need to breathe. I need to breathe. How beneficial that can be, because our bodies are functioning so often on limited oxygen. And so we're not able to access things like deep, complex realizations, thoughts, when we're constantly operating in survival mode. And breath is the thing that often gets us there, because that's our body's first thing, right? I'm stressed, so I'm going to stop breathing. And then we lose all the deeper abilities of our brains, of our bodies, to process the information that we're receiving from our environment. So just as a point of healing, can you begin by breathing? Can you begin by breathing? Yep. So community healing, again, healing circles, which I will be hosting another one coming up, co-hosting in August. If you're interested in breath work, please make sure you're on my email list too, because the algorithms are really liking to play with Black women, content creators specifically. So if you're interested in joining the upcoming breathwork circle that I'll be co-facilitating with a fellow social worker, please get on my email list, which is mpricemsw.kit.com. I believe that's the address. But yes, things like talking to other people, right? Expressing, self-expression is such a huge part of healing from these experiences. You want to be able to, even if just to yourself, because that counts too, but express what happened to you. Who said it? How did it make you feel? Right? Really leaning into the honesty and truth with yourself to be able to begin the healing process. Realizing that you don't need to prove anything, so you don't have to prove your healing, whatever that looks like for you. Right? You can acknowledge that to yourself. So if that looks like breathing, if that looks like taking a walk, incorporating these things that we talked about, right? Dance, journaling, knowing that you have the power to exit, that can be a pathway to healing, right? That no, you do not have to stay stuck in this environment. Yes, you have skills. Absolutely. Making a skills inventory can be helpful if you are someone, and again, working with Black women who are pivoting into freelancing over the past 2 years, this is a roadblock often, because we've been in these environments that have tried to convince us that we're not skilled. We don't think that we're skilled, right? We've internalized how they perceive us, their warped perception of us. We've internalized that. And so it's a process of healing, releasing how they view us. And even that is projection. That's another video topic. It's releasing that and really getting back into how do you view yourself? Viewing yourself through your own gaze, your own lens. Telling yourself all the things that you've done, all the experiences that you've had, all the ways that you've assisted people. This is your skill set. They do not own your skill set. You own your skill set. All right. And so just asking the question, what would healing look like? What would healing look like if you are a Black woman who is currently in a toxic job? Or maybe it doesn't reach the level of toxic, but it is a corporate environment where you do have to shrink. You have to turn off parts of yourself. You have to mute your opinions. You have to silence your voice. This too is traumatic, right? Because we're put here to be the full expression of ourselves. And I think part of the confusion, right, is that we're given messages that run counter to that. That this is what we should expect, right? That we should be happy, that we should be grateful. I know being a first generation college student is something I've had to unpack. Feeling like I should be grateful for this role, even as it's traumatizing me. No. Really getting deep into the messages that we received and releasing the ones that do not serve us is important. And so again, if you are a Black woman and you are still in a toxic job, if you've already left and you're healing from the deep trauma that we experience, I'm opening my wait list to potential clients for my one-on-one healing program. So I'll link that right here, called Release to Rise. And so I'll be sharing more information about this publicly. I already released it to my email list. But this is a link to get on the wait list. Again, something I've been building, thinking about, putting together over the past 2 years at this point. As I think back through my own experience in a toxic job, in corporate settings before that, like I said, starting off in internship programs, diversity internship programs that were harmful environments that I was in. So I hope that I know that this healing program is going to be deeply impactful. As we have heard from Dr. Kamani and I, the co-founder of the Job Liberation Virtual Summit for Black women that we co-host together. We've heard from Black women globally. This is a pattern of behavior that we are experiencing in the workplace. And it's so similar, you would think that we worked at the same company, right? Which is very disturbing. The pattern is that similar, the things that we experience, the ways that we're pushed out when we do speak up about things, when we do express our opinions, when we do follow our job description. Right? And again, as I said at the beginning, someone inevitably becomes intimidated. Right? And then the cycle continues in job after job after job. And it's wrong. Because these experiences are deeply harmful, traumatic. Right? So just recognizing that. So to wrap up, right, I want you to know that you're not alone. You're not imagining it. You do not have to carry it alone. That is why I'm creating resources, healing spaces for us to process what we've experienced and name it for ourselves, right? No one else has to name it. No one else has to ever say that it happened. Something else I'll be talking about, how to heal when someone didn't apologize. When someone never offered an apology or an acknowledgement of what you experienced, how do you still heal? Right? Because it is possible. It absolutely is possible. So yes, I think that's it. Let me just look through my notes. Yes, I appreciate y'all being here. Those of you who are live with me, thank you so much for commenting, for sharing your experiences. Seriously, I know that that is not easy. And it does help us to acknowledge that what we're experiencing, we're not the only ones. Because this type of trauma really thrives in isolation, right? They love to have us be the only one, right? Corner us, do all these things behind the scenes. There's a bunch of people standing around who are saying absolutely nothing. And so we internalize that belief that it's us, right? That maybe it is us. Maybe I should X, Y, and Z, shrink, right? There's a playbook, unfortunately, for Black women in the workplace, right? The contradictory messages that we receive intentionally. And so just knowing and validating to yourself that this is wrong, what we're experiencing, right? The trauma that we're going through day after day after day. And the impact is not small. As leaders in our communities, it does not just impact us, it flows to our families, it flows to our communities. And so know that you are not alone if you're experiencing any of the things that we covered today. I appreciate this. I love this. Good evening, ladies. Go do something that brings you joy. That is a perfect way to wrap up this live stream. And if you're watching the replay, please subscribe to my YouTube channel for content like this in the future. I'll be speaking with Vani. When is that? Next week. I'll have to look at the time again, but we'll be speaking about how to redefine success as Black women. So I'm excited about that topic and trying to think of anything else. I think that's it. But I appreciate y'all being here. Again, if you'd like to get on the wait list for Release to Rise, that is in the description section. If you'd like to work with me one-on-one, that link is also in the description section. Yes, where you can book an intro session. And I appreciate y'all for sharing everything that you shared. And until next time, y'all, thank you so much. Bye.